transformation that we see underway from the CFO perspective. I'm going to spend a few minutes on some of the studies we've done, but really what I want to talk about is where I see a ton of opportunity for us and for our business partners as we take advantage of the trends that Ginny talked about earlier today. So I'm going to start with the results of some of the C-suite interviews we do. Now, just to set up this chart, these are thousands of interviews. They're done all over the world. They're done across every industry, and they're done in all size enterprises, large and small. So your customers are represented here when you look at this data. And I think there are a few things to point out. When we ask the C-suite, what external pressures are you facing that are going to have the most profound impact on your business over the next 3 years? Obviously, as you would expect, different members of the C-suite have a slightly different perspective on what's number one, but what you'll see across the entire C-suite is this idea of technology being a really, really important part, both for their own business as well as what their competitors may do to them. That's really the message here, is that technology is playing a really important part for how your customers see their future. So to put a little more focus on the CFO, interestingly, a few years ago when we did this study, CFO said, as you can see, it was number 5, now number 3. And I think this reflects a couple of changes. One, I'm going to show you the data in a minute on what the CEOs think. You saw it on the prior chart, but I'm going to show it to you over time. And importantly, what's happening here, I think, is CFOs are recognizing that not only do they need technology in order to build out their infrastructure, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but importantly, CFOs are being asked to play a much broader role. And you've heard us talk about this idea of new buyers, and my colleague John Iwata is going to talk momentarily about the Chief Marketing Officer as a new buyer, but CFOs are in that category as well. They're being asked to do more, they're being asked to play a broader role in their enterprise. So when we look over time, as I mentioned, technology now number 3, top 3 for everyone, and playing a more important role in CFOs. I won't spend a lot of time on this chart, but you can see over the last 10 years, for the C-suite studies we've done, you can see how technology has made its way to the top in the CEO's mind. And this is reflective, I guess, you heard Ginny's comments earlier today. All of her peers, when she talks to them, technology is the number 1 opportunity and the number 1 threat to their enterprises. So CEOs got it to the top of the list already in 2012, 2 years ago, and it's made a steady progression over the last 10 years. When we ask CFOs, what's important to you? What's the work that you're doing that is most relevant? And you can see the data here. The first thing to notice is that almost everything is more important than it was a few years ago. And again, I mentioned earlier that this idea that they're being asked to play a broader role, I think you can see that in this data. They're being asked to play a broader role in their ability to measure and to monitor company performance. You can see that on that top element. And look what's made the biggest change over this time period. It's this idea that I have to integrate data across the enterprise now. So again, CFOs are being asked to play a broader role. They're being asked to bring data in from across the organization to help drive the business and reach new performance. What this really spells is opportunity for all of us. Interestingly, when we ask them, what kind of tools are you using? You've already told us that technology is one of the most important, more important than it was a few years ago. You already told us that your boss thinks it's the most important, by the way. What kind of tools are you using? And interestingly, more than half the time, they're still using simple spreadsheets. 2/3 of the time, they're using some combination of spreadsheets and intuition in order to make decisions. This chart is the definition of opportunity. A group of executives who have a broader influence on an organization, who are being asked to do more, who just don't have the tools yet in order to help them get them where they need to be. When we talked to the CFOs in the study, and we started to categorize them, if you will, on which do what the best, we came up with this simplified view of two axes to help describe what we're seeing in the data. So across one axis is this idea of how efficient can you be in delivering your platform to your organization, and the other is how much insight are you providing, what level of insight are you providing to your business in order to help them make decisions. And you can see that we have this group on the top right called the value integrator. And that value integrator has optimized across both their ability to be efficient and their ability to drive insight. I'm going to come back to that idea in a moment, but first, I think it's important to understand the performance that we see out of that value integrator category. So when we talk to them about revenue, and we talk to them about profit, we talk to them about their ability to maximize EBITDA, for instance, that value integrator group consistently outperforms those who haven't optimized as efficiently, if you will, as that group. So I'm going to switch gears for a second now and talk about what these types of CFOs are doing. But again, just keep in context. We have a group that says they're playing a bigger role, and they don't have the tools. It all spells opportunity. The three imperatives that CFOs are using to guide their actions, that they're using to guide their investment dollars, and the way they, quite frankly, are thinking about their business. First and foremost, they are trying to drive agility through their enterprise. I'm going to talk a bit about this in the IBM context in a moment, but they're trying to drive agility through their enterprise. They're trying to help make better decisions by anticipating the future. Sometimes that works using intuition. Data is also appropriate here. But driving better decisions, I'll talk about a little bit more about that. And then importantly, they need to innovate in their own business model. I'm going to use an acquisition example in a moment, but they need to innovate within their own business model if they're going to drive the kind of performance that their enterprise is capable of. So let me go into each of these a little bit more for a few minutes. I'm sure everyone by now has heard of how we organize and run IBM. We have this idea of being a globally integrated enterprise. And not to belabor the globally integrated enterprise, but it's essentially what it means is we get to a common process, we find a set of appropriate skills, and we can locate then that work at the right place, at the right cost. But really importantly, what it allows us to do is to now deploy our resources where we see growth, so that when we open a new branch in China, or when we move into a new country in Africa, we're deploying sales and delivery resource that's relevant to a client and relevant to the kinds of work they're doing. We do not recreate an IBM accounting department and a payroll department and a disbursements department. The IBM platform is there to support them, but we don't have to recreate it. So one, we can move much faster into these areas of opportunity. And secondly, and really importantly, we can remain in those and we can keep our investment in those places longer, because some of them, as you would expect, are quite volatile. They could be up 40% one quarter and down 40% the next quarter. Hopefully over the long-term trend, the growth is there. But quite frankly, without having to carry the IBM platform with them, that's been recreated in every place, they're pretty agile in how they move, and we can stay in these new places much, much longer. So again, that IBM platform is shifting wherever we see opportunity. This is a tremendous opportunity for you and us to go help our clients become more agile by, again, deploying these common processes, building that platform that then allows your clients to go find new sources of growth. We're also using within IBM analytics. The example I have here is a global financing example. So global financing, I'm sure everyone's aware of what they do, but roughly they're $30 billion in assets. They are assets that represent your working capital, for instance. They're assets that represent your clients' financing needs. 30 billion in assets. We have deployed an analytics solution that lets us look at in thousands and thousands of iterations what kind of risks we have within that portfolio. Understanding risk is obviously important for a CFO, that wouldn't surprise you. But more importantly, what it allows us to do is understand that both the tail risks and understand the attribution analysis for that portfolio so that we know where to go direct our resources so that we can keep that overall risk reward of that portfolio in balance. As you would expect in any financing business, any leveraged financing business, you do take a lot of risk. It really is your ability to identify and price that risk that keeps you in that business for a long time. And IGF does it extraordinarily well, and we do it really well, again, because we have these kinds of analytical tools in place to help us manage that portfolio. A very powerful solution. Now when you're out with your customers, when you're out with your CFOs of your customers, again, think analytical tools as opposed to the spreadsheets. Think advanced portfolio modeling tools as opposed to spreadsheets and intuition when you're trying to help them allocate their resources. And then finally, I said I'd use an acquisition example. IBM is, I think as everyone knows, a very acquisitive company. You can see the data on the screen. We bought over 150 companies in the last 13 years. Now the thing that we're able to do, and the reason we can do this is because we've analyzed all the acquisitions we've done with the help of our researchers, and we've turned that analysis into an attribution analysis of our portfolio. Not every one of our acquisitions has been a winner. We have a few that haven't done so well, but we understand in a very detailed attribution analysis what were the attributes of those that were successful and what were the attributes of those that weren't successful. Now what that enables us to do on any specific acquisition is it enables us to go into due diligence and understand really, really well what are the top 3 or 4 or 5 things that we have to get done in that acquisition so that we can make it successful. And secondly, and probably more importantly, because again, acquisitions are a big part of our model, it allows us to do a lot of acquisitions, even simultaneously. And you can see the data from 2010 as an example where we did 17 acquisitions. That's a lot of teams to put on the field at one time, because acquisitions don't take a day, they take quite a while. So with this tool and the teams on the field, we can now and have been able to transform our own business model using the power we have and the ability to acquire. And we do continue to acquire. We rely very heavily on this capability, and we rely on this capability, again, to transform the IBM business model. So to wrap up, there is a huge opportunity here. The CFOs are being asked to do more, and they don't have the tools. The things that they're being asked to do require them to be very efficient. It requires them to take some of those efficiency and reinvest it, but more importantly, it requires them to be able to deliver that platform for their business anywhere in the world the company sees opportunity. And there's a big opportunity for all of us to help our clients do that. There's a huge opportunity in the way they analyze their business, trying to get ahead of and predictive of the future so that they can deploy resources more effectively. And finally, there's a big opportunity in building systems such as our acquisition system, which allows us now to transform our capabilities and our business model over time as we try to transform the capabilities both that we have as well as where we see the world going. So there's a ton of opportunity here for CFOs as a new buyer. Now to continue the conversation, I'm going to invite up another new buyer. He's the Senior Vice President of Marketing and Communications for IBM, and John's going to continue the dialogue. Please welcome John Iwata.
Thank you, Martin.